The first sensation was pain. Not the dull ache of muscles unused, but a razor-sharp electrical storm of synapses, firing after centuries of absolute stillness. Colonel Elena Rodriguez's augmented eyes flickered open, each microlens adjusting with a series of near-silent clicks that echoed like thunderclaps in the sterile silence of the cryobay. Her first breath was a violent thing, a ragged inhale that tasted of stale recycled air, antiseptic, and something indefinably ancient. Around her, 47 other pods began to pulse with life. Their occupants, the last specialized military unit of Earth's most desperate era, awakening from a sleep that had lasted longer than entire civilizations. Araria, the ship's quantum AI, materialized as a holographic construct directly in front of Rodriguez. The projection was deliberately imperfect, a shimmer of blue-white light that never quite solidified, representing the AI's quantum nature. Its voice was a layered symphony of synthesized tones, carrying the weight of 7 centuries of accumulated data. Threat assessment complete, Araya announced, its vocalization sending micro-vibrations through the ship's deck plating. Civilization as you knew it, extinct. Current galactic status, critically unstable. Rodriguez's augmented brain processed the information with inhuman speed. Neural implants, relics of humanity's last great technological leap before the global conflicts, began cross-referencing Araya's data with the unit's original mission parameters. Something was fundamentally wrong, and she could feel it in every genetically enhanced fiber of her being. Lieutenant Marcus Chen was the next to fully awaken, his cybernetic interface already probing the ship's systems. Where Rodriguez was pure military precision, Chen represented the pinnacle of human technological adaptation. Fingers that were part organic, part quantum computing interface danced across holographic displays, pulling apart layers of data with surgical precision. Araya, Chen called out, his voice a controlled razor's edge. Run a full-spectrum diagnostic on our position and temporal drift. The holographic AI shifted, displaying a 3-dimensional star map that was simultaneously familiar and completely alien. Quantum entanglement markers lit up like a cosmic Christmas tree. Signals, communications networks, and stellar cartography that bore no relation to the charts of their original mission. Total temporal drift, 712 years, 3 months, 16 days, Araya reported. Last known point of origin, Earth, Sol system. Current location, Outer Spiral Arm, Confederation Neutral Zone. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, the unit's tactical specialist, was already moving. Her augmented body moved with a predatory grace that defied the centuries of suspended animation. Weapon systems that were cutting-edge technology in the 22nd century now felt like archaeological artifacts, yet her muscle memory remained razor-sharp. Confederation, Rodriguez questioned, her mind already tactical, already planning. ARA, detailed report. The AI's projection expanded, showing a complex network of stellar nations, trade routes, and political boundaries that looked more like a living organism than a static map. The Earth they had known, fractured, fighting for survival, was nowhere to be seen. The human civilization you remember no longer exists in any recognizable form, Araya explained. Multiple diaspora attempts, technological divergence, and eventual cultural fragmentation have rendered your original mission parameters obsolete. Chen's fingers continued their dance across the interfaces. Obsolete, he muttered, is a relative term. Rodriguez watched her team come fully online. Each soldier was a marvel of human engineering, bodies and minds enhanced beyond the limitations of their original design. They were weapons, yes, but also repositories of human potential, frozen at the moment of humanity's greatest desperation. The U.S. Resilience hummed around them, a massive generation ship that had been humanity's last hope. Now, it was something else entirely, a time capsule, a weapon, and potentially the most dangerous unknown factor in a galaxy that had forgotten what humans were capable of. Status of original mission, Rodriguez commanded. Araya's response was chillingly simple. Initiated. Awaiting further instructions. The first contact was anything but diplomatic. Confederation Border Patrol Squadron Epsilon 7 detected the U.S. Resilience as an anomalous signature, a ghost of a ship that shouldn't exist, moving with a precision that defied contemporary navigation protocols. Commander Zirak, a seasoned quantum diplomatic corps officer of the triluminescent species, watched the sensor readings with growing unease. Unidentified vessel, he transmitted in standard galactic protocol, his 4 vocal modulators producing a sound that was simultaneously a warning and an invitation to communicate. You are entering restricted space. Identify immediately or face interdiction. The response was not what anyone expected. Inside the Resilience, Colonel Rodriguez studied the incoming transmission with a Predator's calculation. Her neural implants were processing the communication at speeds that would make most AI systems look primitive. Lieutenant Chen had already begun a systematic deconstruction of the Confederation's communication protocols. They're using a quantum encryption that's generations ahead of our original systems, Chen muttered, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. But it's fundamentally similar to early 22nd century quantum communication theory. It's like they've built a skyscraper on a foundation we designed. Rodriguez's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Send our response. The transmission that went out was a masterpiece of technological archaeology. Using an encryption protocol that should have been dead for centuries, Rodriguez's message was a precise, mathematically elegant response that did more than communicate. It challenged. The message contained a precise mathematical sequence that was simultaneously a greeting, a challenge, and a demonstration of technological capability. Embedded historical data markers from Earth's last global conflict. A quantum signature that was part identification, part digital handshake. On the Confederation bridge, Commander Zirak watched in stunned silence as the incoming transmission not only bypassed their most advanced security systems, but seemed to speak a language of technology that predated their entire civilization. Impossible, breathed Sub-Commander Lyria, her translucent exoskeleton shifting color in patterns of shock and confusion. The mathematical sequence was more than a message. It was a statement. Humans were back, and they were anything but extinct. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez had already brought the Resilience's defensive systems to full readiness. Weapon systems that were centuries-old hummed with a potential that felt almost alive. Adaptive targeting systems that had been cutting-edge during Earth's last global conflict now seemed to pulse with an intelligence that went beyond mere programming. They're preparing to fire, Martins reported, her augmented vision parsing the Confederation ship's energy signatures with terrifying precision. Recommend preemptive defensive maneuver. Rodriguez's response was immediate. Negative. We demonstrate, not escalate. What followed was a display of tactical brilliance that would become legendary. The Resilience didn't just avoid the Confederation's initial weapons lock. It danced between their targeting systems with a grace that seemed to defy the laws of spatial mechanics. Chen's fingers flew across the interfaces. I'm rewriting their targeting algorithms in real time, he reported, a hint of excitement bleeding through his professional tone. They're trying to target us, but we're essentially teaching their own systems how to miss. Commander Zirak watched in growing horror and fascination. The unknown vessel wasn't just avoiding their weapons. It was demonstrating a level of technological and tactical superiority that challenged everything the Confederation understood about space combat. The final transmission from the Resilience was a quantum encrypted message that was part greeting, part challenge, and part declaration. Humanity. Awakened. Prepared. In that moment, the galaxy shifted. Something fundamental had changed, and no one, least of all the Confederation, was ready for what came next. The Confederation Research Station was a marvel of modern engineering. A massive spherical structure that orbited a neutron star, its quantum computing cores capable of processing more information in a nanosecond than entire planetary networks could manage in a century. Dr. Xelera, the station's chief researcher, had dedicated her entire career to understanding the limits of technological advancement. She was about to have everything she knew completely dismantled. Lieutenant Marcus Chen stood in the station's primary analysis chamber, surrounded by holographic interfaces that would make most technological experts weep with joy. But to Chen, these were nothing more than elaborate children's toys. His hands, part organic, part quantum computing interface, began to move with a precision that seemed to defy the very laws of information processing. "Your quantum encryption is fundamentally flawed," Chen announced, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. Around him, the station's top researchers watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Dr. Xelera's translucent skin shifted colors, a biological response to extreme emotional states. "Impossible," she stammered. The station's most advanced security systems were supposed to be unbreakable, a culmination of centuries of technological development. Chen wasn't listening. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, systematically dismantling the station's most complex systems using nothing more than repurposed 22nd century computing modules and pure human ingenuity. In less than 17 minutes he had completely mapped the station's entire communication network, identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in their quantum encryption, developed a complete bypass for their most advanced security protocols, rewritten their primary defensive algorithms to be 10 times more efficient. The researchers watched in stunned silence. Nearby, Colonel Rodriguez was engaged in a different kind of technological demonstration. The Confederation's diplomatic corps had assembled what they considered their most advanced negotiation team, a group of beings whose combined cognitive capabilities were supposed to represent the pinnacle of interstellar communication. Rodriguez saw them differently. To her, they were a complex system waiting to be understood, analyzed, and ultimately outmaneuvered. "Your diplomatic protocols are fundamentally reactive," she explained to the assembled team, her neural implants parsing their biological and linguistic responses in real time. "You've developed a system of communication that assumes predictability, but humanity has never been predictable." Lieutenant Sarah Martinez was conducting her own demonstration in the station's tactical simulation chamber. The Confederation's most advanced combat simulation, a program designed to be unbeatable, found itself completely outmaneuvered by Martinez's approach. Where the simulation expected linear tactics, Martinez introduced chaos. Where it anticipated defensive positioning, she created offensive opportunities that seemed to emerge from impossible angles. Each movement was a complex dance of probability, risk, and pure human creativity. The simulation's AI began to overheat, its processing cores unable to comprehend the level of tactical innovation being presented. Dr. Xelera approached Chen, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial shock. "How are you doing this?" she asked, her voice a mixture of professional interest and genuine wonder. Chen smiled, a rare occurrence that sent a chill through the assembled researchers. "We're not just using technology," he explained. "We're understanding its fundamental nature. Your civilization sees technology as a tool. We see it as an extension of human potential." It was more than a demonstration. It was a declaration. The Confederation had believed humanity was a lost civilization, a footnote in galactic history. In the span of a few hours, the crew of the U.S. Resilience was rewriting everything they understood about technological capability, tactical thinking, and the very nature of innovation. Something fundamental had changed, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand the true meaning of human potential. The holographic projection filled the briefing room, a 3-dimensional nightmare that made even the most seasoned Confederation officers go silent. What appeared to be a star map was actually something far more terrifying, a historical record of galactic extinction events that defied conventional understanding. Colonel Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the projection, her augmented eyes scanning the data with a predator's intensity. The threat wasn't just another invasion. It was a systematic process of galactic culling that had been ongoing for millennia. "This isn't random," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "This is mathematical. precise, calculated. The Confederation's top strategists, a diverse assembly of beings from across the stellar nations, listened with a mixture of skepticism and growing dread. Grand Strategist Voxeran, a multi-limbed being from the Quantum Resonance Collective, leaned forward. "Explain," he demanded. Rodriguez's neural implants began to project additional layers of analysis. Historical data, quantum probability matrices, and complex computational models began to dance around the holographic display. Each layer revealed something the Confederation had missed, patterns of destruction that were too perfect to be coincidental. Lieutenant Marcus Chen stepped forward, his quantum-integrated interface connecting directly with the projection system. "It's a harvesting mechanism," he said, his voice clinical and detached. "Not just an invasion, a systemic reduction of potential technological threats." The projection began to show a horrifying timeline. Entire star systems, not just planets, but entire stellar clusters, had been methodically erased. The pattern was so precise it almost looked like a form of cosmic gardening. Civilizations were allowed to develop to a certain technological threshold, then systematically eliminated. "How many?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, her tactical mind already mapping potential defensive strategies. Chen's response was chilling. Approximately 1,742 known civilizations over the past 600,000 years. The frequency is increasing. We're approaching a critical convergence point. The Confederation strategists exchanged looks of growing unease. They had known about periodic galactic threats, but never with this level of detailed understanding. The human crew was seeing something that generations of advanced civilizations had missed. Grand Strategist Voxeran's multiple appendages shifted nervously. "Our previous containment strategies are useless," Rodriguez interrupted. Her augmented brain was already several steps ahead, mapping out potential countermeasures that went beyond conventional warfare. The holographic display shifted, showing complex dimensional interfaces that looked more like living art than strategic diagrams. Where the Confederation saw impenetrable barriers, the human crew saw opportunities. Potential weakness points emerged, microscopic gaps in what appeared to be a perfect extermination mechanism. "They harvest based on technological signature," Chen explained. "But they have a fundamental misunderstanding of adaptive potential. Specifically, human adaptive potential." Martinez began overlaying tactical simulations. Each model showed something impossible. Scenarios where traditional defensive strategies collapsed, but human unconventional thinking created unexpected survival paths. "This isn't just about fighting," Rodriguez said, her voice taking on a philosophical edge. "This is about understanding the fundamental nature of survival, of potential." The projection continued to spin, a complex dance of stellar data, extinction events, and emerging patterns. What had seemed like a hopeless scenario was now transforming into something else entirely. A challenge. An opportunity. Voxeran watched the human crew with a mixture of terror and growing respect. "You're suggesting we can do more than survive," he said softly. "You're suggesting we can turn this mechanism against itself." Rodriguez's smile was something between a predator's grin and a strategic calculation. "Exactly," she replied. The forgotten threat was no longer forgotten, and humanity had just announced its return to the galactic stage. The mission seemed impossible, even by the Confederation's most generous standards. A quantum-locked pirate base, hidden within the gravitational maelstrom of a collapsing neutron star. Previous reconnaissance missions had resulted in total loss of personnel and equipment. 3 separate task forces had been obliterated, their wreckage scattered across the star's event horizon like metallic dust. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez studied the mission parameters with a predator's concentration. The holographic display flickered with complex gravitational models, quantum interference patterns, and probability matrices that would make most tactical analysts go blind. "This is a suicide mission," muttered Captain Relix, a veteran Confederation tactician whose scaled skin rippled with nervous energy. Martinez didn't even look up. "No," she corrected, "this is an opportunity." The U.S. Resilience hung in space like a phantom, its systems so fundamentally different from contemporary vessels that it looked almost archaic. But beneath that exterior lay technologies that predated, and in many ways transcended, current galactic engineering. Colonel Rodriguez watched from the bridge, her neural implants parsing multiple tactical scenarios simultaneously. "Chen," she called out, "give me options." Lieutenant Marcus Chen was already several steps ahead. His quantum-integrated interface danced across holographic displays, each movement revealing layers of potential approaches that defied conventional military logic. "The base uses a quantum entanglement defense grid," Chen explained, his voice clinical and detached. "Traditional approaches will fail, but their system is fundamentally built on predictive algorithms, and predictability is our advantage." What followed was less a military operation and more a complex mathematical ballet. Martins led a small infiltration team, just 4 enhanced soldiers whose capabilities went far beyond standard military training. Where modern combat units relied on advanced weaponry and quantum communication, these humans brought something far more dangerous: adaptive intelligence. Their approach defied every known tactical doctrine. They didn't fight the neutron star's gravitational forces, they used them. Quantum-locked defensive systems designed to detect and neutralize incoming threats found themselves confronted with an attack vector that wasn't just unexpected, but fundamentally incomprehensible. Chen's systems began to systematically dismantle the pirate base's defensive grid, not through brute force, but through a form of technological judo, using the system's own complexity against itself. Defensive algorithms designed to predict and neutralize threats found themselves trapped in recursive logic loops. "They're trying to predict our next move," Chen muttered, a rare smile crossing his face. "But they're thinking in linear terms. We don't." Martinez's team moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy physical laws. Augmented bodies enhanced not just with technology, but with a deep understanding of human potential, they transformed the infiltration into a performance of tactical artistry. One by one, the pirate base's critical systems began to fall, not through destruction, but through a form of technological reprogramming that left the systems intact but fundamentally transformed. When the mission concluded, the Confederation's observation team was left in stunned silence. What should have been an impossible task, infiltrating a quantum-locked base within a neutron star's gravitational well, had been completed with minimal equipment, 0 casualties, and a level of precision that seemed to defy known physical laws. Captain Relix turned to Rodriguez, his voice a mixture of terror and grudging respect. "How?" he asked simply. Rodriguez's response was characteristic in its simplicity. "Humans don't just adapt," she said. "We redefine the parameters of what's possible." The pirate base remained where it was, a trophy, a message, and a warning. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The invasion arrived like a nightmare made physical. Reality itself seemed to buckle and warp as the extra-dimensional threat emerged. Entire star systems winked out of existence, not destroyed, but simply erased from the fabric of space-time. The Confederation's unified fleet looked like children's toys against the incomprehensible force that was consuming the galaxy. Colonel Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Resilience, her augmented eyes parsing computational models that would have driven lesser minds into complete breakdown. The invasion wasn't just a military conflict, it was a fundamental assault on the very nature of existence. "They're not conquering," Lieutenant Marcus Chen observed, his quantum-integrated interface spinning complex probability matrices. "They're pruning." The holographic displays around them transformed into a living representation of the invasion. Dimensional breach points erupted like cancerous growths across the galactic map. Where previous civilizations had seen only chaos, the human crew saw a pattern, mathematical, precise, almost beautiful in its terrible logic. "It's a computational harvest," Rodriguez announced, her voice cutting through the mounting tension. "They eliminate potential technological threats before they can evolve past a certain threshold." Lieutenant Sarah Martinez was already mapping tactical responses that went beyond conventional warfare. Her augmented tactical systems were processing information at speeds that made the Confederation's most advanced AI look like primitive calculators. Grand Strategist Voxeren of the Quantum Resonance Collective watched in growing horror. "Our defensive strategies are useless," he muttered, multiple appendages moving in patterns of deep distress. Rodriguez turned, her gaze intense enough to make even the most seasoned alien strategist take a step back. "Not useless," she corrected. "Just unimaginative." What followed was less a military strategy and more a fundamental reimagining of conflict. Chen's systems began to do something unprecedented. Instead of trying to fight the invasion, they began to study it, to understand its fundamental computational logic. Each dimensional breach became a data point, each erased star system a complex mathematical equation waiting to be solved. "They operate on a predictive elimination model," Chen explained, holographic displays spinning around him like living art. "They identify potential technological threats and remove them before they can become a true challenge." Martinez's tactical team began implementing a strategy that defied every known principle of warfare. They weren't defending. They were presenting a different kind of potential. Each defensive position became a complex mathematical provocation, a challenge to the invasion's fundamental computational model. The human approach was fundamentally different. Where the Confederation saw an unstoppable force, humans saw a complex system with inherent weaknesses. Their augmentations weren't just physical, they represented a different way of perceiving reality itself. Entire fleets repositioned with a fluidity that seemed to defy physical laws. Defensive lines transformed into complex computational traps. Each movement was part of a larger, almost incomprehensible strategy that went beyond simple military tactics. "We're not just fighting," Rodriguez announced to the assembled strategists. "We're rewriting the parameters of the conflict." The invasion began to slow, not through conventional resistance, but through a form of technological and computational judo that used the threat's own logic against itself. Dimensional breach points began to collapse, not through force, but through a fundamental recalculation of potential. Voxeren watched in stunned silence as the seemingly unstoppable invasion began to falter. "How?" he whispered. Rodriguez's response was characteristic in its simplicity. "Humans don't just survive," she said. "We evolve. We adapt. We redefine the very nature of the challenge." The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had just demonstrated that the most powerful weapon was not technology, but the ability to fundamentally reimagine the nature of conflict itself. The final confrontation was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a war of fundamental existence, a conflict that would redefine the very nature of galactic survival. Colonel Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of a dimensional conflict that defied comprehension. Around her, the fabric of space-time twisted and warped, reality itself becoming a battlefield more complex than any physical engagement could ever be. The U.S. Resilience was no longer just a ship, it had become a living weapon, an extension of human potential that challenged the very laws of physics. Lieutenant Marcus Chen's quantum-integrated systems were pushing beyond every known technological boundary. His fingers, part organic, part computational interface, moved in patterns that were simultaneously mathematical equations, tactical strategies, and something closer to an art form. Each movement was a complex dialogue with the extra-dimensional threat, a conversation conducted in the language of probability and potential. "We're not fighting them," Chen muttered, his augmented mind processing information at speeds that would have reduced most computational systems to molten circuitry. "We're negotiating with the fundamental nature of their existence." Lieutenant Sarah Martinez coordinated a tactical approach that was more quantum meditation than military strategy. Her augmented team moved with a fluidity that suggested they were no longer entirely bound by traditional physical laws. Each movement was a calculated provocation, a way of presenting humanity as something fundamentally unpredictable and unquantifiable. The extra-dimensional threat, a computational harvesting mechanism that had systematically eliminated potential technological civilizations for millennia, found itself confronted with a species it could not categorize. Humans refused to fit into any predictive model, any systematic elimination strategy. Grand Strategist Voxaren and the assembled Confederation leadership watched in a mixture of terror and awe. What was happening wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. It was a fundamental reimagining of conflict, of survival, of existence itself. Rodriguez's voice cut through the dimensional chaos. They operate on a principle of potential elimination, she announced, her neural implants parsing complex dimensional interfaces that would have driven lesser minds to complete breakdown. But they fundamentally misunderstand the nature of potential. The confrontation became a multi-dimensional chess match played across realities. Where the extra-dimensional threat expected linear responses, humans presented fractal possibilities. Each defensive position was simultaneously a trap, a provocation, and an invitation to reconsider fundamental assumptions. Chen's systems began to do something unprecedented. They weren't just defending or attacking, they were communicating. Breaking down the computational logic of the threat, presenting humanity as a variable that could not be easily calculated or eliminated. Potential isn't a fixed point, Chen explained, his voice calm amid the dimensional turbulence. It's a living, adaptive concept. And humans embody that more completely than any species they've encountered. Martinez's tactical team moved with a precision that seemed to defy physical laws. They weren't just fighting. They were presenting a challenge to the very nature of the threat's existence. Each movement was a complex mathematical argument, a proof that humanity represented something fundamentally unpredictable. The turning point came not through destruction, but through a fundamental recalculation. The extra-dimensional threat found itself confronted with a species that didn't just adapt, it transformed the very parameters of adaptation. Entire dimensional breach points began to collapse. Not through force, but through a complex computational dialogue that rewrote the fundamental rules of engagement. Voxaren watched in stunned silence as reality itself seemed to recalibrate. They're not just surviving, he whispered. They're evolving the very nature of survival. Rodriguez's final communication to the threat was both a warning and an invitation. A complex quantum transmission that was part mathematical equation, part philosophical treatise, part declaration of human potential. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had just demonstrated that the most powerful weapon was not technology, but the ability to fundamentally reimagine the nature of existence itself. The aftermath was not a celebration, but a fundamental transformation. The U.S. Resilience stood as more than a ship. It was a living testament to human potential, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become. In the vast conference chamber of the Galactic Concordance, representatives from thousands of stellar nations watched in a mixture of anticipation and lingering fear. Colonel Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, no longer just a military leader, but a diplomat of an entirely new caliber. Her augmented body and neural interfaces represented something more than enhanced technology. They were a living embodiment of human adaptability. "We are not conquerors," she began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human struggle and potential. "We are architects of possibility." Lieutenant Marcus Chen stood beside her, his quantum-integrated systems interfacing with the chamber's massive holographic displays. With a simple gesture, he began to unfold the story of humanity, not as a linear narrative, but as a complex, multidimensional tapestry of survival and evolution. The holographic projection revealed layers of human history that defied conventional understanding. The generation ship's mission was no accident. It was a carefully constructed contingency, a seed of human potential planted during Earth's most desperate moment, designed to germinate when the galaxy needed it most. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez presented the tactical analysis, not as a report of conquest, but as a comprehensive study of adaptive potential. Each conflict, each challenge the human crew had overcome, was presented as a lesson in survival that transcended traditional military thinking. Grand Strategist Voxaren, who had witnessed humanity's extraordinary capabilities firsthand, spoke first. "You didn't just survive," he said, his multiple appendages moving in complex patterns of respect and wonder. "You redefined the very nature of survival." The Galactic Concordance Chamber was silent. Representatives from civilizations that had existed for millennia found themselves confronted with a species that had been essentially forgotten, now revealed as something far more profound than anyone could have imagined. Chen's presentation began to show how human approaches could transform existing galactic systems. Technological barriers that had seemed insurmountable became opportunities. Political deadlocks transformed into collaborative possibilities. The human perspective was not about dominance, but about potential, a fundamental reimagining of collective existence. "We'd bring more than technology," Rodriguez explained. "We'd bring a way of thinking that sees challenges as opportunities for growth." The U.S. resilience became more than a ship. It transformed into a symbol, a living artifact that represented humanity's journey. Its systems, a blend of ancient and revolutionary technologies, became a blueprint for a new approach to galactic cooperation. Lieutenant Martinez demonstrated how human tactical thinking could be applied to diplomatic challenges. Conflict resolution became less about power and more about understanding, less about winning and more about collective advancement. The Chamber began to understand that humanity's return was not a threat, but an invitation to reimagine what was possible. Voxeren presented the Galactic Concordance's initial response. Humanity would not be integrated into existing systems. Instead, they would be given a unique status, a collaborative partner with the potential to drive collective evolution. "You are not returning to the galaxy," the Grand Strategist announced. "You are helping the galaxy return to itself." Rodriguez's final statement was both a promise and a challenge. "Humanity's potential," she said, "has always been about more than survival. It's about transformation." As the conference concluded, something fundamental had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had returned, not as a forgotten species, but as architects of a new potential. The seed planted centuries ago had finally germinated, and its roots would reshape everything.